today we are going to be going through all of my favorite palettes this year. We're going to rank the top 10 for you guys. These are my top 10 favorite palettes that I tried this past 2023, since today is 2024, so tried this past year. I don't know why I'm talking so weird, but I haven't filmed in a few days and I'm pretty tired. So these are the creme de la creme, my favorite palettes this year. And actually, I am very confident in my top 10 this year. These aren't just my favorite palettes that I've tried this year. They're also my most used palettes this year. I have went into these palettes a ton, and I kept on wanting to go back into these palettes specifically because they just impressed me so much. And they're not just top 10 favorites of the year, but also some of my favorite palettes in my collection now, because some of them are amazing. So yeah, let's get into it. So before we kick it off, I just wanted to say that there are a couple of new brands in here to me. There's some repeat brands that I went back to because I just love their formula, that I decided to purchase some of their palettes this year as well that they came out with. But we're going to kick it off with number 10, and this is the only ColourPop palette that is going to be in the top 10. Honestly, like, I mean, of course, it's going to make an appearance at least once in my top 10. I mean, duh. But, like, ColourPop just didn't really impress me this year. I really feel like I was mostly bored with most of their releases. And also, like, some of the stuff that they did come out with, I wasn't really, like, wowed by the color story. The formula was good, but, like, the color story was, like, all over the place. But this was an unexpected favorite, and I ended up falling in love with this palette. So number 10 is the ColourPop 1111 palette. So, again, this is the only ColourPop palette that's going to be mentioned in the top 10. But honestly, like, this palette is really, really pretty, guys. Like, this is such a good neutral palette, especially for people that don't really love super warm tones or really super cool tones. I feel like this looks like a cool tone palette, but it kind of leans a little bit warmer almost. And this is like my kind of neutral palette. And I know that so many people were comparing this palette to the Natasha Denona I Need a Nude palette, but I think that this palette is way better. Like I said before, in my first half of the ranking, I ended up returning that palette, and so that ended up ranking on the very bottom because I didn't even want to keep it. This palette is really pretty, and the reason why I like this palette way more than the Natasha Denona one is because it has this row of deep, dark mattes on the bottom that adds such beautiful depth and dimension. This palette's really, really good. And even though these shades, like these three mid-tone shades, are kind of light, when you build them up, they just look so pretty and effortless on the eyes. And the shimmers are just so stunning in this palette. And also, they're just so effortless and sparkly and beautiful and smooth on the lids. And they just have like this angelic, like, quality to them that makes your eyes look just beautiful and ethereal, and they just add such a beautiful twinkle to the eyes that I was just very, very impressed with this one. This one was a very unexpected favorite for me because I didn't get this palette until after I saw Makeup by Treen's video, and she absolutely raved about it. She was like, I wasn't really into like some of the ColourPop palettes that came out recently, and then she tried this one. She was like, oh, it's just going to be another boring neutral palette, and then she tried it, and she's like, this palette is so unexpected for me, and she said that she loved it. So I was like, I think I need to get it, and I'm so happy that I did because it's beautiful, and I've used this palette a ton. I've used this palette so much since I've gotten it. It's one of my favorite neutral palettes of the year, so I'm really glad I decided to get this one. This is where ColourPop shines. And I really feel like they just need to go back to the basics, and I'm glad that they're doing that, but also, like, they need to release some, like, newer fun collections, you know? They're kind of losing my interest a little bit. So my favorite shade in the palette is, of course, the gold, which is called Manifest It. And I always swatch my favorite shade out of all my top 10 palettes usually. I think I did that in the first half as well, but that's what I usually do. And look at that. Isn't that such a beautiful, sparkly, metallic gold? Like, it just reflects so beautifully. And this has such beautiful like individual sparkles in it. It's just so pretty. They're just so much more multi-dimensional than you would think they would be. So I really love this one. So this one was number 10 for me. And I'm so glad I decided to pick this one up because honestly, it was a really, really good palette. And I knew that I was going to use this palette a ton. I just didn't think I was going to love it as much as I actually do. I was like, oh, it's probably going to be cool tone and I'm not really going to use it as much. And then I ended up using it over and over and over again. I just wanted to keep on going back to it because it's just such a pretty one. So that one is number 10. Okay, let's move on to number 9. Now, this is a new brand to me this year, and I knew in 2023 I really wanted to try this brand, and this was the first palette that I knew I wanted to try from them. So number 9 is the Glaminatrix Cosmetics Nearly Natural palette. This probably would have fallen a little bit higher if I didn't incorporate some of the newer palettes that I tried in the second half of the year into my top 10 because I was just so blown away by them. But this is definitely probably my most used palette this year. So, of course, it had to be in the top 10, but also because Glaminatrix's formula is just so good, you guys. These shimmers are insanely beautiful on the lids, and the mattes work really, really nicely. I actually prefer the mattes that are in the Rich Romantic palette, but I really, really like pairing the two together. And I actually think that the formula in that palette is maybe slightly better because the mattes in here are a little bit drier and they're not as pigmented, but they're still really, really good. So I really love this palette. I used this a ton when I first got it. I just kept on going back to it over and over and over again. The shimmers are insanely metallic and glittery and beautiful and shiny. Cannot get enough of these, and the mattes just work really easily. They're such easy mattes to use, and basically all the mattes that are in here go so well with all of the shimmers that you really don't need another matte to pair with these shimmers. And the difference between this palette and, like, again, the Natasha Denona I Need a Nude palette is that these shimmers are so insanely beautiful that they just stand on their own. That basically these mattes are here basically to assist how beautiful the shimmers are. Like, they just show off how metallic they are. But also, all the mattes in here are so well thought out that you don't really need another one. Like, this green goes with this green so well, and then you can deepen it up with the browns, or you can use this cool tone brown and pair it with this shade or this shade, and then you have the pink, which goes with most of the metallics in this palette, especially the pink one. And then you have these really good, like, neutral toned browns that go with pretty much all the colors. I just think that this palette is such a well thought out color story, and I understand why they paired these shades together. Like, the I Need a Nude palette doesn't even compare to how good this palette is, honestly. I really was not impressed with that palette. And then meanwhile, my Natasha Denona palettes that I got this year fall way higher in this top 10 because I loved them so much. So that should tell you something. I still love Natasha Denona. I just did not like that palette. So my favorite shade in this palette is Naked Eye. This one is such a stunning, super shiny, gorgeous, wet metallic. It's this really beautiful, like, champagne-y kind of shade. And the difference between the ColourPop and the Glaminatrix is that the Glaminatrix has so many different, like, reflections of glitters in it. It's like silver and gold and champagne, and it's just so insane how blinding these are on the lid. So I had to put this one in the top 10. I mean, it was a no-brainer. As soon as I tried this palette this year, I'm like, I know that this is going to be in my top 10 of the year because it was one of my most used neutral palettes of the year. It's nearly natural because it has, like, the green in here, and it has, like, some very interesting twists on neutrals, and I love it. I absolutely love it. I thought it was fantastic. that they made me go back and buy another palette with the Rich Romantic one. And I love that palette too. Absolutely no regrets getting either one of the Glaminatrix palettes because they're raved about for a reason, because their formula is fantastic. So I am so glad I decided to try them this year, and they were my first new brand this year, and I absolutely was blown away. I absolutely love this palette. Okay, number 8 is another new brand to me this year, and oh my god, this palette is so good. I'm kind of kicking myself that I didn't pick up their Christmas palette, but the reason why I got this one is that, one, I loved the color story so much, but also Annette's Makeup Corner got me to get this palette. As soon as I saw her rave about this, I don't even think I even saw her video on it when I ordered it, because I don't think her video was up until the day after or maybe the day of, but I think I knew I was going to order it anyway. So number 8 is the Simply Posh Citrus Punch Palette. Oh my god, you guys, I mean, this one is falling a little bit lower just because I only see myself really using this palette in the summertime, but this was my most used summer palette. I kept on going back to this constantly because the formula is so easy to use. These mattes work so beautifully and blendable and pigmented, but they're just so easy to blend. And I love that we have this mid-tone row, and then we have this row of more depth and dimension. That's usually how they do their palettes, is run one row of mattes and then one row of shimmers and then another row of mattes. And these shimmers are so ridiculously stunning. They're all duochromes and they all reflect so beautifully on the eyes. I absolutely loved this palette for the summertime. I just loved how bright and beautiful this was. I would have taken this to California probably if I had it at the time. I don't think I got it until July, but I am just so happy I tried Simply Posh because there were a few brands that were on my list this year that I wanted to try, and then I ended up trying like 3 other brands that weren't on my list initially, and this was one of them. And then I saw this palette and I was like, I need that in my life, and it's just so freaking good. These shimmers are stunning. My yellow shade Tangy does have a little bit of hard pan, but it goes on the eyes so beautifully, and sometimes I actually prefer my shimmers to be a little bit more hard pressed, but it still applies beautifully and it still stays on the eyes so long. But also for me, I feel like it doesn't transfer then. If they're more hard pressed, it just stays on your lid all day and you don't really have to deal with that, sparkle transferring to your crease. So I'm just so in love with this palette. The mattes are absolutely amazing and the shimmers are just so smooth and sparkly and beautiful. So my favorite shade in the palette is called Sour. I mean, the greens in here are fantastic. But the reason why I love this green shimmer is because it reflects so beautifully on the lids. It reflects like pink to green, but honestly, swatches don't really do something justice. It kind of completely transforms when you put it on your lid because it just shifts so many beautiful colors. And again, this shimmer formula is just so smooth and beautiful that I am just so blown away by their formula. I really wish I would have picked up the Cozy Cabin palette, but honestly, I kind of wanted to take a break from eyeshadow palettes in December. I was like, I really just want to enjoy my collection this December. I ordered the new Ensley Rain palette, so Ensley Rain is going to be my next new brand. So that's already going to be my new brand in 2024. I'm already going to be trying them. But I am not putting Simply Posh on the back burner. I'm going to see what else they come out with this year. I might possibly add another palette from them to my collection because their formula is just fantastic. And this packaging is so cute. How cute is this packaging? I love it. So bright, beautiful, colorful palette. I absolutely loved that palette. Okay, number 7 is a repeat brand to me. I almost picked up all of their palettes this year, but I stopped myself after the third one that they released, but that one was featured in my first half because I wasn't as impressed with this one as I was with the other two palettes in the top 10. So number 7 is the Nomad Verona Amor y Muerte palette, or Morte palette. It's the Romeo and Juliet palette. I'm going to butcher that name so badly. But this is probably my absolute favorite packaging of any brand or any palette that I tried this year. This packaging drew me in so much. And then once I saw the color story, I'm like, I have to get it. But look at this packaging. Isn't it completely freaking utterly stunning? Like, amazing. Like, I'm obsessed with this packaging. And then the cover is the same. Like, how freaking cool is that? And then I love how it opens like this. Some people are like, I don't really like it, but I think it's so cool. So the right side is the Juliet side, like the love side, and then this side is the death side for Romeo, and this is the death side because obviously it's the tragedy of Romeo and Juliet. And also it was their Valentine's Day release this year. So I mainly got this palette because of the pink side, because I've said this so many times about brands, is that why is it so hard for brands to release just a pink tone palette? So this was actually super pink toned. The only thing that I would say about this is that some of these pinks can be so similar on the eyes, but they're such a good formula. Like they just apply, and these shadows last so long on the eyes. Like I was really impressed with Nomad's longevity this year. I think they really improved their formula. I mean, not that their formula wasn't amazing before, but this palette really changed the game for me, and I was like, oh, I think I'm gonna start collecting their palettes. So I ended up picking up both of the releases after this one, but I ended up falling in love with the death side a lot more than I did the pink side, because like I said, it's just a little bit too similar for me with the pinks, but the reds in here are stunning, and these you can definitely tell more of a difference with when you use them on your eyes as compared to the pink mattes. But the shimmers are stunning. But the death side, I'm going to consider these two separate palettes because I'm going to swatch both of my favorite shades from each one, because I really do think that you get your money's worth with this palette because you're basically getting two palettes in one, and I love that they did that. And this was only like not even, I think this one was $45 as compared to $39 of their regular price palettes. So I actually think you're getting a great deal with this palette as well, because you're getting 18 shades. But the death side, oh my god, this is such a stunning color story. This color story is probably my favorite one that they did this year. I love these grays and these blues and these purples, and I love the matte black. I find that I don't need anything else here, but also I combined this palette a lot with other Nomad palettes this year. So really beautiful formula, and I didn't really have any trouble with these shimmers. I know some people were kind of complaining about that they thought that the shimmers in this palette were a little bit hard pressed. I preferred the shimmers in this palette as compared to the ones in the Akavango Safari palette, because I find that these ones are more unique, way more metallic, and way more shimmery on the lids. And also, these really don't transfer, like I said. When you do or use or when a brand comes out with like more harder pressed shadows, sometimes it doesn't transfer as much on my own lids, because I find that I probably have a very small lid space. So for me, it's perfect. And I thought that the mattes here were such beautiful depth and dimension. So I absolutely loved this palette. The only thing I would say is that the pinks are just a little bit similar, but they still turn out really beautiful. So my favorite shade from the pink side is the shade Comedy. This one is not going to do it justice if I swatch it, but this is such a stunning red shimmer on the lids. it's already a little bit hard pressed when I'm trying to swatch it for you guys. But when you put this on your lids, it's such a beautiful, sparkly gold red metallic. It's absolutely stunning. It's so pigmented to not pigment to on the eyes. I love it. And then for the depth side, my favorite shade is, I mean, I really love Tragedy, but I think my favorite shade is Juliet. Again, you're not going to be able to see how beautiful this one is really in a swatch. But when you put this one on the eyes, I didn't even realize that this actually shifts purple to blue. And this shifts even more on your eyes when you like turn your head and you see the shift in it. I didn't even notice the shift until I wore it for the first time at work. And I looked at how my eyeshadow looked after like a couple of hours, because you know I do like to see if it's like transferred or anything, or if the formula is not holding up as well. And this was so stunning. I was like, oh my god, I didn't even realize it had a shift to it like that. I mean, I thought it would, but I didn't even notice it until you put it on your lid. So yeah, beautiful palette. Absolutely love it. And I'm so glad I decided to pick this one up, because I originally was not going to. And then I was like, I ended up using this palette a lot more than I thought I would. And I ended up absolutely loving it. So I had to get it. Okay, so number 6. Number 6, and then we're getting into the top 5. Oh my god, this palette, you guys. This palette is phenomenal. And this is the only palette that I've tried from this brand so far. So this one is the second to last new brand to me, because actually my number 1 palette was a new brand to me this year. But number 6 is the Bella Beauté Bar, the Sun and the Sea palette. Oh my god, you guys, I'm probably the most impressed with this formula this year. Bella Beauté Bar's formula is fucking fantastic. Like, sorry for swearing, but it is so fantastic. Like, if you haven't tried Bella Beauté Bar and you are thinking about trying them, I would just go for it. You will not be disappointed. I really have not seen anyone be really disappointed with their formula, you guys. Their mattes are just so pigmented, but they blend so well. They're not powdery whatsoever. They're just so vibrant and beautiful on the eyes. Like these 3 blues, probably the best blues that I've tried in a long time. They are so good. And the reason why I say that is because they're so easy to blend. And again, they're so vibrant on the eyes. But the shimmers, you guys, the shimmers are so insane. They are beautiful. They are so wet looking. Each shimmer has this beautiful shift to it. It's going to be really hard for me to pick my favorite shade in this palette because they're all so freaking stunning. I'm actually going to have a hard time picking my favorite shimmer because also this is the most shimmer heavy palette that I'm talking about. But when I saw this palette, I'm like, this is going to be the palette that I try from this brand because it was like half neutral, half colorful. The only thing that I wish this palette would have had is maybe like one more purpley shade, because this shade, Bikini, is such a stunning like magenta-y kind of purpley pink that I wish that there was like maybe a deeper purple, because these can look very similar on the eyes, but they're so good that it doesn't even matter, because I find that I don't get tired of these because they pair so well with these shimmers. But maybe we could have had like maybe one other different shade, and this shade Tan Lines is actually a perfect brow bone highlight for me. But these shimmers are so beautiful. This Bella Beauté bar is so worth the money because I think these 2 are multi-chromes, and then these 3 are duochromes. This one's a multi-chrome, I believe, and these 2 are super sparkly, and so is this one. Oh my god, it's such a gorgeous palette, such a beautiful formula. I'm absolutely obsessed with their formula. It's just so good. I really don't know which one's my favorite. I really do love the shade Heat Wave. I think I'm going to say that one's my favorite. Look at that. But it's kind of very similar to the other shade I'm going to swatch from the next palette. But honestly, I think this one might be my favorite because it shifts so many beautiful colors like green to red to orange to gold. It's just absolutely stunning. And they're just such a wet, beautiful, sparkly formula. I can't say enough good things about this palette. I just used it a couple of days ago because I wanted to use a couple of my top favorite palettes this year before the year was over. And I'm absolutely obsessed with their formula. They are doing everything right. And they are raved about, again, for a reason because their formula is absolutely fantastic. So that is number 6. Okay, top 5. We're into the top 5. Can you guys guess before I say them? I'll give you a minute. Okay, so number 5 is another repeat brand to me. I just ended up picking up this one right after I picked up the Verona palette. So number 5 is the Nomad Royal Europe palette. There is no way I could not have this in my top 5, you guys. This is Nomad's best formula they have ever done. This formula is insanely good. Like, these, even though the mattes are very very dark, they are insanely good. They are so pigmented, but somehow they are so blendable and they last such a long time on your eyes. They are so intensely dark and they just transfer to your eyes literally the way they look in the pan. Like, they're not any darker when you apply them to your eyes, and they last so long and they are so ridiculously pigmented. But they're so easy to blend. And you really don't need that much of it. So be a little careful when you apply it because you really don't need that much of it. Like, honestly, you'll just dip twice into the pan and it'll be in your crease already. Like, you really don't have to spend too long blending these. And then this row of multi-chromes, they are stunning. Absolutely stunning. I'm so glad that Nomad decided to do multi-chromes this year because these are phenomenal. They're so smooth on the eyes, so beautiful and shifty and metallic and gorgeous, and I absolutely cannot say enough good things about this palette. It is their best formula that they've ever done, in my opinion. I was so blown away by this palette that the Aquavango Safari palette kind of disappointed me because I was like, they went from this to the Aquavango Safari palette. I mean, that's still a good palette, but this formula, they need to put in every single palette. Like, it's fantastic. So I was just blown away by this formula. And again, I wasn't sure I was going to pick this up, but as soon as they said it was going to be a multi-chrome palette that was $59, I'm like, sold. I'm like, multi-chromes are so expensive, and for you to make it $60, I'm sold. I'm like, I'm getting it. So my favorite shade in this palette is called Royal Treasure. And this one, again, is a little bit similar to the one I just swatched, but actually they are pretty different because the Bella Beauté Bar Heat Wave, oh my god, I'm already getting like glitter on my sweater, is a lot more red based. Actually, like, this one is more like magenta-y red, and then the Bella Beauté bar is more like a sunsetty kind of reddish color. But look at Royal Treasure. Isn't it beautiful? I'm not going to be able to capture how beautiful this actually is. It shifts so beautifully on the eyes, and I actually just wore this palette and I wore this shimmer again like 2 days ago. It should be in my everyday makeup lookbook from this past week because that should be going up before this video. But I have to swatch my favorite matte in this palette because the mattes in here are insane. I'm just going to swatch one of them just to show you guys how intense these are. Like, I barely even swatched in the pan. Look at that. Look at that. Like, insane. Look at how smooth that is. Are you kidding me? Have you seen a matte swatch like this? Especially a blue? No dustiness, no powderiness. Just one swipe, and look at how pigmented and smooth that is. Like, that is so good. So yeah, absolutely obsessed with this palette. I love it so much. I cannot rave about this palette enough. If you want to try multi-chromes for a good price, and you're not afraid of color, or if you want to dip into more color, I highly suggest starting with this palette. You will not regret it. All the multi-chromes are absolutely stunning. I absolutely love this palette. Oh, and also I ended up combining this palette with quite a few of other Nomad palettes too, especially the Verona palette. I was pairing that one a lot with this one. And also I would use the gold Imperial Crown like all the time on the inner corners because it's such a beautiful gold. But again, all these shades are absolutely beautiful. I absolutely love it. The brown in here is such a good deepening shade to deepen up any look that I just found that I didn't really need any other shades. Even though these are very mid-tone, I didn't find myself really desiring to use any other mattes because these are so good that you're just blown away at how good the quality is that I didn't really need other mattes to create looks with this palette. So I absolutely love it. Oh my god, so good. Okay, number 4. This one crept up my list real quick. And I wasn't even intending on getting anything from this collection. But then I kind of got sucked in after I saw the swatches and after I saw her video talking about this palette. And I kind of swore to myself I wasn't going to get any other Odin's Eye palettes this year unless they were going to re-release the Christmas collection, and they did, and then I ended up picking up the Christmas Eve palette. But this palette just, from the quality of the Florastory palette to this palette, that's why the Florastory palette disappointed me so much, because this is the Odin's Eye quality I expect, and I know that they can do because it's fucking phenomenal. So, number 4 is the Odin's Eye and Angelica Nyquist Trick or Treat palette. You guys, I didn't think this was going to go up my list so quickly, but oh my god, she absolutely smashed it with this release. With this palette and the Little Ghost palette, I was so tempted to pick up the Little Ghost palette because I actually don't really own too many purples from Odin's Eye, but then I was like, I kept on going back and forth to see if I was actually going to pick it up. But then I ended up just getting this one, and I have zero regrets. The mattes in here are insanely good. They are so true to pan. This orange is insane. It is so pigmented, and so is this red and this green. So beautiful, and the shimmers are just absolutely stunning on the lids. They just sparkle so beautifully. Like I've said before, there is nothing like an Odin's Eye shimmer. They are just so beautiful on the lids. And I know everyone was raving about this green shade, and it is freaking stunning. It's called Witch's Brew. And this ended up being my only Halloween palette that I picked up this year because I usually pick up one Halloween palette per season and then one Christmas palette per season, and then both ended up being from Odin's Eye because I picked up their Halloween palette and I picked up the Christmas Eve palette. So I just found that I didn't need any other palettes from any other brands, and the Christmas releases from other brands, I was just like, I don't really need them. I have the Christmas palettes that I wanted, and like I said, since I picked up the Christmas Eve palette, I didn't need anything else. But these are just absolutely stunning. These shimmers are insane, and I know everyone was raving about this shade, but this shade was my favorite. And this one is the signature shade in the palette called Trick or Treat. It is freaking absolutely stunning on the lids. And I found myself going for these burgundy reds quite a few times. That I actually ended up doing this look 3 times. So, but just the depth that just the vision that she has for color stories are genius. I'm sorry, but she is just such a magician when it comes to putting color combos together. These are so beautiful, but also I feel like this is such a good palette for people that want to jump into color but like don't know where to start. I think that this is a great palette to start with, because like reds and greens, you know, they're not just, you know, kind of Christmassy, but also like I will kind of think about these colors as being like Halloween shades. I mean, of course, you have your signature neon orange, but the way that she went about this palette is just absolutely stunning. So, like I said, my favorite shade in the palette is called Trick or Treat, and this is such a beautiful red, you guys. We have a lot of reds in this video, but this red is just so freaking stunning. Do you see how pigmented it is? And again, it has so many different multi-dimensional, beautiful, different sparkles in it that you really don't see unless you like apply it to your eyes. So really, really loved this palette. If these palettes are still available, I highly suggest you pick them up. They were doing a really good sale of these palettes during Black Friday. I know obviously that's over. This mint shade is insanely gorgeous. This deadly shade, oh my god, you guys know how much I love these kind of orangey bronze shades. You guys know I love the gold. This Crypt Keeper shade is beautiful. Just every shade is so stunning. I have to swatch this orange though. This orange is insane how pigmented it is. That's what it looks like. And again, like just as smooth as the Nomad one. Like I think that these are the 2 best matte formulas I tried this year. But again, since I know that Onan's Eye can do this type of quality, that's why the Flora Story palette was so disappointing. And the brown in here adds all the depth that I need, and so does this green and this red. It's just such a good palette. I absolutely loved it. And again, it really crept up my list real quick. And I didn't even think I was going to get anything from this collection, but I absolutely loved this palette. So that one is number 4. Okay, top 3. Any more guesses? So number 3 and 2 are both from the same brand. And I just was blown away by these 2 palettes that I said before. I cannot believe that I returned the I Need a Nude palette, because these 2 palettes were so fantastic from Natasha Denona that I had to rank them in the top 3. So number 3 is the Natasha Denona My Dream palette. This is my absolute favorite palette that she's ever done for a neutral palette. This is my type of neutral palette when it comes to Natasha Denona. I absolutely love this palette, and I know I tried this palette at the end of 2022, like the very end of 2022. I think I had just gotten it, like maybe the last week of December. So I didn't really get to officially rank it last year, so I ended up ranking it in my halfway through the year ranking this past 2023. But I really wanted to include it in my top 10 of 2023 because I really didn't get the use out of it that I wanted to until 2023, because that's when I had ended up trying all of the shimmers. So that's why I put it so high, and that's why I wanted to include it in this ranking. So I'm sorry if it's cheating that I tried it at the end of 2022, but again, I really didn't get my use out of it until 2023, like January. So that's when I was using it over and over and over again, and this palette is absolutely stunning. The mattes in here are some of her best mattes I've ever used. And I love that we have like all these deeper dark tone mattes. We have this brown shade, we have the black, we have like this deeper purple, and then we have this really deep purple. And then the shimmers are stunning, and I love that we have like these warm tone mattes. But then we also have some cool tone mattes. I just think you can go in so many different directions in this palette. You can combine so many of the different colors together that I just look at the possibilities that I can do with this palette as compared to the I Need a Nude palette to realize that I didn't need a nude, that this is everything that I need from a Natasha Denona palette when it comes to neutral looks, but also I can create so many beautiful, smoky, sexy, sultry looks with this palette that I'm like, this palette is just unbeatable to me when it comes to what Natasha Denona can do. And that's why the I Need a Nude palette kind of disappointed me so much, because I know that she can do this kind of palette. So it's just like Odin's Eye. It's like I have really high standards for Odin's Eye, Nomad, and Natasha Denona. Even the Akavango Safari palette, even though I didn't love it, I still loved that palette way more than the Flora Story and the I Need a Nude palette. That was still a good palette. So Nomad be kicking ass. But anyway, my favorite shade in the palette is the Multichrome. I know we're swatching a lot of multi-chromes, but this multi-chrome is so gorgeous. And the way that she does multi-chromes, they are so insanely smooth and beautiful. But some of the shimmers in this palette as well are some of my favorites I've ever tried from her. But they're just so good. So I just used this palette like a couple of days ago on me and my boyfriend's anniversary. And I was just reminded on how good this palette was. So I was reaching for this palette quite a lot in 2023. And I'm going to continue to use this throughout this year as well. We'll see what she releases this year. I'm very excited. But so far, this palette has been unbeatable to me as to a neutral palette. Same thing with the retro palette. Those are the only two neutral palettes that I need from Natasha Denona. And I absolutely love this palette. So, yeah. That's number 3. Okay, number 2, like I said, is a Natasha Denona palette. But you guys, I didn't think I was going to be so blown away by this palette. These are the best shimmers that Natasha Denona has ever done. And this was the only one that was released in 2023 that I picked up from Natasha Denona. And that is the Natasha Denona Yucca palette. Wow, you guys. Wow. This just absolutely blew me away with the quality. I know some people can look at this and be like, that's kind of dingy and dirty looking, but I freaking love this. I love the color combos that she put together with the mattes in this palette. The mattes are so geniusly coordinated in this palette, but the shimmers, these are some of the best shimmers that I've ever tried, period. These shimmers are insanely good. Insanely good. Sorry, I just want to close my blinds because it's dark out now. We don't need the blinds open anymore. So, but these shimmers are blinding. They are so insanely metallic, so shimmery, so sparkly, so beautiful. And the mattes are just such a good range of yellows and greens and oranges and even neutral shades. The possibilities with this palette is so beautiful. The only thing that I wish that she did in this palette is kind of included like a even deeper dark matte than this. But this matte is so good for building any depth or dimension that you need in this palette. And these mattes are so freaking good. I finally was able to try this chartreusey one. It is so intense, Camu Camu. And this green, I kind of wish that this was a powder, because I find that this one doesn't work as well as her other cream to powder formulas, but it's still a really good shade. So, but the shimmers are absolutely the star of the show in this palette. And I think my favorite one, because again, of course, you guys know I'm such a sucker for golds. So my favorite shimmer in the palette has to be Kamarabi, because it is insane how sparkly this shade is. They are so ridiculously blinding. Do I even have room? Yeah, I'm just going to swatch them down here. Look at this. Like, look at that. It probably compares to like the intensity of Glaminatrix shimmers. That's what I would compare them to when it comes to like a mainstream brand. I think that if you want more accessibility to like a brand like Glaminatrix, you should just try this palette. Like seriously, this shimmer formula is insanely beautiful. I was so blown away after the first time I put these on my lid. I was like literally jaw drop. They are so stunning, and the mattes are so good in this palette. Again, I feel like the possibilities are pretty much endless with this as also compared to the My Dream palette that I was like, how the heck did she release this I Need a Nude palette? Was more like I Need a Snooze. Because like these two palettes blew me away. So yeah, I absolutely love this palette. I'm so excited to see what she has in store this year. But this is probably my favorite Natasha Denona palette ever. I just think it's absolutely phenomenal quality. Okay, time for number one, you guys. And it's on my eyes today. Of course, I had to wear the number one palette for this video. This palette just took the spot for me, took the cake, took the crown, because as soon as I tried this palette this year, and I actually didn't even buy this palette myself, this was gifted to me by my dear friend Kat, and honestly, nothing beat this formula for me. I just can't believe how good this palette is and how affordable this palette is that it had to be number one. And that is the Cosmic Brushes Muse palette. Of course, this is number one. This was number one in my halfway through the year rankings, and it's also number one in my top 10 because this palette is so fantastic, you guys. And the mattes in here like pretty much blend themselves, and I honestly am so blown away by the shimmers in this palette. I know not a lot of people really rave about the shimmers of Cosmic Brushes. They're like, the mattes are so blendable and beautiful and pigmented, but the shimmers are insanely good. They are so beautiful. And when I tried this for the first time, I could not believe how easy this palette was to use. And as I experimented with color combos with this palette and tried different color combos that I thought wouldn't go together, I'm like, oh, I don't think those two shades are going to go well. They blend so well together. They don't like oxidize together. They don't blend together like muddying up the other color. They just stay true to pigment no matter what color you use. Like if I decided to put this yellow shade with this teal, it would stay true to pigment. And I kind of need to do that. I think that would be an insanely cool look. But these shimmers are insanely beautiful, and the mattes are just so good that this had to be number one. I don't think I can say anything else about this palette. Luster is such a gorgeous inner corner highlight, and I sometimes use it as a highlighter as well. You can use these pink shades as blushes. You can even use like this lighter brown shade as a bronzer. Like I feel like these shades are so versatile that you could use it all over your face. Like this would be a great bronzer for medium to dark, and this one would be a great one for deep skin tones. Like you just have it all right here, but these shimmers are absolutely stunning. And my favorite shade, I really love Patina and Muse and Luster. I think I'm just going to swatch Muse and Patina because those are my two favorite shimmers. They are so insanely smooth. They feel like such a high-end, high-quality formula that you just cannot believe that this is only 20 bucks. So this one is Patina. It's such a gorgeous, like, greeny, dark, deep, goldy green. And this one is Muse, which is obviously the signature shade in the palette. And it's such a stunning, like, super beautiful, shimmery, pinky gold. I just absolutely love this palette. And again, the mattes are so good. These greens are absolutely amazing. And this pop of yellow is so unusual, but it's so gorgeous. And these pinks are amazing, and I love the neutrals in here. So for today, I took Haze in the crease, Then I darkened up the crease more with Rosewood, and then I used Fig on the outer corners. And then for the lid, I just slathered Antique all over the lid, and it's such a stunning shade. And then for the, I think that's it. That's all I used because I just went in with a single shadow on the inner corners because I didn't want like the pink duochrome today. I just wanted something really neutral, but it's just so beautiful. I can't rave about this palette anymore. I just wish that there was like one like purpley lavender in this palette. But as I tried the rest of the mattes and put them together with the shimmers, they are so good. I just love this palette so much. So this one had to be number one. I kept on wanting to use this palette over and over and over again, and the quality is just fucking insane. So that had to be my number one palette. I don't think anybody is surprised. And I just want to swatch like a couple of the mattes because they're just so good. Look at that. Look at that pigment. Are you joking? And I'm just going to swatch them over here. You can pretty much see how pretty they are. That's the yellow and that's that tealy shade. What are those called again? The yellow is called Admire and the teal is called Nouveau. So yeah, that is it, you guys. That's my number one palette. That's my top 10 of 2023. Please let me know in the comments below what your favorite palette was this year, and have you tried any of these palettes? Or any of these your favorites? I would love to know. Did you not like some of these palettes? I would like to know everything. So yeah, that is it from ranking all my eyeshadow palettes that I tried in 2023. I hope you enjoyed both parts. I really was super excited about talking about these palettes because they were really fantastic brands that I tried this year and top tier quality formulas that I'm really blown away by the quality of these palettes that I tried this year. So I'm excited to see what 2024 brings. I don't think I'm going to be trying as much makeup this year, to be honest. Like, I really don't need to add that much more makeup to my collection. The Ensley Rain palette is the only palette that I've ordered so far to try this year. But we'll see. We will see what 2024 has in store for me. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. So please like and subscribe. Follow me on my Instagram at CBW819 and check out my Poshmark at the same handle. I'm going to go wash my hand off. But I just love like this rainbow of beautiful shimmers and mattes. I mean, kind of really cool color story. Maybe we should make this a palette. That'd be so cool. So I love you guys and I hope you guys have a great day. Bye.